Today's been so busy, but I am back really quick for a interview that Alivea did, who is Kaylee's sister. Kaylee was one of the students from Idaho that was killed. I'm not going to get too far into it with detailed words. I don't want to get flagged, but during sentencing yesterday, her sister read a victim impact statement, and it was a big deal. Everybody thinks that that was the most impactful of the day, and maybe even in recent memory, the best one. I don't know. We're gonna watch her interview, but don't worry if you have not seen where she went up to read and talk to Brian Kohberger. I will play that after this video. So if you missed it, I'll get it up in just a little bit. Let me move myself to the corner. If you are on my last live with me, Lori Vallow is officially going back to prison after receiving more life sentences. All right, let me know if audio-wise, if you need me to go quieter or louder, just let me know.
So moving what everybody said yesterday, but your victim impact statement was, there's just no words. What did that feel like?
So I have to be honest, I was rewriting my entire script in the pews waiting to get up there, because everything before, my dad, I would say, was so heartfelt, was so emotional, and was so true to the victims. And I had so many doubts in my mind because I knew my speech wasn't that. And before walking in, you feel confident, but when you see something that's so moving and so emotionally engaging in a capacity, I had doubts. I was like, I'm doing them a disservice. I have to change this. So there was a lot of nerves. But then I think, and I have to give this to my dad, when he got up there and just moved that podium, something in that courtroom shifted. And I feel like my dad spread his wings so that I could fly. And I basically said, screw it. You felt confident in this. You've worked hard on this. You're going to get up there and you're going to do this. By then I had rewritten everything. So a lot of it, I just had to go off of memory, what I had memorized. So a lot I unfortunately left out, or maybe fortunately, because it was already very long. But it was really, really nerve-wracking for me up until the moment my dad got up there and did what he did. I don't think I would have been able to do that without him going before me.
Yeah, I immediately noticed him move the podium, and I think it was just almost instinctual. I don't even know if he had that planned.
I don't think he had that planned at all. I think that it genuinely was, that raw moment of just being like, I'm going to face you face to face. There's not a middleman here. There's not, and I don't even want to say man to man, because I truly don't feel like I could get into that, but he's not human. I can't describe that any better, but I don't think he planned to move that. I think that it was just something that for him gave him power, and it gave a lot of power to that courtroom. And I was really, really proud of him for doing something that was so true to him. It was such a dad move for me, where I'm like, that's my dad.
Yeah.
And I'll remember that forever.
And you've been in the same room as Brian Kohberger before. I think, has it been more than once? I remember in Moscow.
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
Yeah.
I don't know how many, maybe 4 or 5.
Okay.
On 4 or 5 occasions.
But this was so different because you were standing up and you were in front of him, locking eyes. He was looking at you too.
Yeah.
For the entire thing, pretty much.
Yeah.
So what did you see? I've never been able to see him that way.
Yeah, I've never seen him in that capacity either. Even in times that I've been in the courtroom with him or watching the live stream, I purposefully avoid, not because of a fear or anything, just because I don't feel like he deserves it, right? I try not to focus my time on this individual. But my speech wasn't to Kaylee and Maddie, it was for them. And if Kaylee and Maddie had been here today, it was something that I feel like would have rung true to them. So I wanted to maintain that eye contact as much as I possibly could. And when I tell you, there's not a human there, right? I'm not scared of this individual. I'm not intimidated by him. Truly, I'm not. But when I tell you there's a primal sense of alarms, like my body was telling me, run, get out. This is a threat. This is not a human capacity. I can't explain to you, like, it wasn't an animal. It wasn't like, the best description I can give you is like if I had come face to face with an alien, because back behind there, there's no human being. There's no humanity. I don't know if you've seen Gerald's Game, and I don't even know if I should bring this up, but the Moonlight Man, it genuinely felt like that. Like, this is a creature that my body doesn't recognize. And that fear was almost like an instinctual panic. So to fight that down, you know, and to try to like tell yourself like, you're okay. Like, you know, you're here for a purpose and we're going to do this purpose, but you're okay, was something that I didn't anticipate. You think it's just a human being, and I'm not scared of human beings, but he is not that. When I tell you that raw anger and that raw rage in his eyes was something that I don't have the words, but it was not human.
Did he show anything? Did he show any acknowledgement of what you were saying?
I think it's difficult for me to view that, because I think that that would be more of like a looking back in hindsight type deal. But for me, it was just one-on-one. Like, and I was ready to stand on business, right? Like I was there. There was nothing that was going to make me back down from that moment. And all I felt was rage. Almost from the very, very beginning, all I felt was rage. At one point in my speech, when I'm speaking more to how I'm trying to say this was an impact statement, I'm more so directed towards the judge, and I turn my body in that direction. And I could feel that specific stare the entire time. It was unrelenting. And all I remember feeling really was like, this guy's pissed. Like, this is anger like I've never experienced firsthand before.
I think you showed him, and the other family members too, that you had the power. I think that was clear.
My whole purpose of that speech was taking back this power and giving it back to Kaylee and Maddie, Xana and Ethan as well. But for me and my personal connection to Kaylee and Maddie as my sisters, I wanted to give them the hero moment that I truly feel like they deserve. Throughout this whole process, he has controlled so much of the narrative, and it's been focused around him, his name, his actions. And I understand it, but in my shoes, it pisses me off at times, because you see Idaho students, University of Idaho students, his name victims, or just the headline of his name. And it's so frustrating, because it's like, they have names. Kaylee Goncalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. Say it. You know, you take the time to say his name. Say theirs. I understand it's 4. I understand it takes a second. But you owe them that. So for me, it was about taking back that control from him, best that I could, getting under his skin as best as I psychologically could with my limited understanding of what he is, and giving it back to the victims the best that I could. And it was all genuine. It was all incredibly true. Everything that I've said, that I did say, I think was accurate to who he is, who they were. And I truly do believe Kaylee would have kicked his ass.
Yeah, when you said sit up straight when I talked to you, I was just like, damn.
I know it's corny, but
No,
for
it wasn't
me,
corny.
like, I needed power moments for myself to say, you know, okay, it's time to transition to this next part. To say, you know, and that was right before I was going into those questions. And I really was tossing with myself back and forth on giving his questions any more notice, right? But I stuck with it and I did do that. But I needed that power moment to be like, all right, we're amping up in this statement, Alivea. You know, we've kind of touched on where we're going. This is the turning point. And I knew that tail end was harsh. So I needed minutes in there that were super corny, super cheesy, but I needed it for me.
Did you want him to speak? Were you frustrated that he didn't speak? Did it really matter at that point?
I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I thought it was funny that he respectfully declines as if he's still so desperate for that approval from an authority figure. But it really didn't bother me, and it definitely wasn't unexpected. I think anything he would have said would have been fake, disingenuous, a lie, or dug his grave further.
Yeah. How are you and your parents doing? I mean, I was just trying to imagine like you all were at Airbnb last night, and your parents and you always come across so strong. That's sort of the way we know you guys, you know. But what was it like when you all left?
I think leaving, we all felt really proud of ourselves that we definitely had different kinds of statements than I think that you would typically see. And we stayed true to us and we did it, you know, and maybe we had certain regrets about them. I know that I definitely did. But it was a huge, almost immediate sense of relief, of being like, this chapter's over. Like, we don't have to come back here. We don't have to go into a courtroom again. We don't have, like, we put all our cards on the table. You know, we gave it our all. And I think that last night, despite the circumstances for being here and despite it being the sentencing, we did good last night at home. You know, we didn't have any, you know, sad, weepy moments. And normally we do. Normally it's kind of a, you know, go back home, lick our wounds. It was good. It was good. And we did get a lot of support, and that definitely helped and probably is a huge attribute to why we were able to kind of stay elevated for a minute. But yeah, last night, believe it or not, last night was a good night for us.
I just happened to be sitting near you, behind you guys and near all the families. And it really felt like a united front. It felt like, and it was so much stronger than him. Did you get, I mean, you know what I mean? Kind of almost like an army versus like a weak person.
Yeah.
That feeling really came across.
Yeah.
In the courtroom. It wasn't like I mean, it was sad, but it wasn't like all these sad people.
Yeah.
It felt more strong.
Yeah. I think that everyone stayed true to exactly who they were and what they needed to do. And it makes me so proud of every single person who got up there and had the courage to say what they did, because it was a lot to walk up to that stand and speak into the mic. And I think I can't even describe it, but walking into the courtroom, that feeling versus walking out, somehow throughout these speeches, little by little, it all came together to be at the end, like, yes, like, you know, even someone that I hadn't met, but, you know, was, you know, a cousin of Xana, like, I'm like, come here, give me a hug, Bobby. Like, you know, it was this truly united front that was, you know, it felt invincible. It felt impenetrable to be like, we did that, you know, and we have something to be proud of. And I think part of that's just because we've had to be so quiet for so long. And I don't mean talking to the media. Obviously, you know, we've spoken to the media probably more than we should have. But I mean to feel like our words were heard, they were understood, and they were true to us. And in a capacity that had maybe the impact that we wanted it to. Maybe it didn't. Maybe, you know, everything that I said fell on deaf ears to the defendant. That's fine. It was a gamble I was willing to take. But I think what everyone said mattered. I think it was felt. And I do think that it had an impact. Maybe not in the traditional sense of what a victim's impact speech typically is, but I don't think that we were delivering our victim impact speeches in the typical capacity that they're normally delivered in either.
What you said before the hearing to me about wanting all the information before, it didn't make as much sense to me until I was there, and then I heard the information that came out after that you already knew. And it really then made sense of why you, if you're going to have this honest moment and you only get one chance at it, it made sense to me why you would want to know those awful details.
Yeah, my speech was the best that I could, and I'm not a psychologist. I don't have, you know, anything in that. It was me trying to dismantle an ego the best way that I knew how, with as many weak spots as I could find. So for me, knowing all of the information was twofold. One, it was so that his actions could no longer be used against me, so that I knew that there were no more blows coming, no more low blows that I had to swallow after this. And the second step there was, yes, understanding this monster as much as I could. Because honestly, online, there's very little of him. I found, you know, a Quora account, which is like a forum. You know, he answered a few questions. He never asked a question, of course, because he has all the answers. But he answered some questions. There was an old school Tapatalk account. There was his Spotify. And then, you know, obviously just what we had heard through the grapevine from people who had kind of known him by association. So I'm trying to take as much information about this individual as I can to make a very pointed, direct attack that's tailored to him, to the best of my ability. So I wanted as much information as I could so that I could, you know, leave no stone unturned. Maybe the rap career really does embarrass you. I don't know. Maybe you're really proud of it, but I'm not leaving it unturned.
Yeah. Again, we were able to get, I think it was like 250 pages so far of documents. Stuff, a lot that you found out, I think, the day before.
Yeah, we asked very like directed, pointed questions. We sent them over the night before.
Yeah.
Just to kind of try to like streamline things, allow them to come prepared. There wasn't a whole lot of open discussion. So a lot of stuff that I've seen come out of the docs, the stuff that maybe we didn't know, but they weren't our burning questions, if I could say. Maybe they'll now lead to some burning questions, I don't know. But yeah, some of that information we did find out that Monday before.
I mean, it's worse than imagined in some ways.
Yeah. Monday was really hard because we finally heard specific details on what had happened to Kaylee. We never got a copy of her autopsy before this. We actually just got a copy yesterday. Do you want me to stop?
No, you're good.
Okay.
You're good.
And so we had her death certificate, which just lists causes of death. And then I think there was some secondary information there. And then a brief phone call that we had with the coroner on November 17th. And I had kind of scribbled notes as we were having that conversation. So we have literally a picture of my scribbled handwritten notes and Kaylee's death certificate, and trickles in. And some of it is true and some of it's not true, but you don't know what part's true and what's not true. So Monday was really, really hard to hear a lot regarding, you know, the specifics of what had happened. And not that we didn't know, but just hearing how hard Kaylee really did fight.
Yeah, it's a lot, you know? And also learning, like, at the press conference yesterday, how little they know about, I guess I was wondering all along, like, is there going to be more secret information? You know, and there really isn't that much more, it doesn't seem like, in terms of motive. Or they say that they don't know why that house, they don't know why, who the target was. Is that hard? I mean, there's certainly no question that he did it now, but it just in terms of the why.
It's a little hard, and not because of the why, but it is difficult in some capacity to deal with the lack of as an answer. I will say though, the police officers and the investigators are so extensively thorough. And I don't think that they would get up there and give their opinions. And I don't think that they would get up there and even give, educated guesses based off of other circumstantial evidence if they don't have hard evidence itself. So I think, and maybe it's juvenile, but reading through all of that documentation, I think that we will get a lot of answers that maybe asked just directly seemingly have no answer, because it's not having to be proven in a court of law anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that, if I was forced to explain how 2 + 2 = 4, but I can't give you, a specific evidentiary, legally binding basis of that, it might, I might not be able to do that. Is that making sense?
It is, yeah. Even like with the WSU stuff, we had reported and talked to students who said that they, had issues with women, but even now to see that in writing, some of that stuff just backs up things we had already heard. Yeah, and I think
I have not been able to access the site because the site is continually crashing. So I literally have not been able to get on the site and download these documents myself. So I'm just looking at screenshots that others are sharing at this point. But from that, you can see, some of these tips that were turned in after he had been arrested. And I don't think all of the tips were necessarily corroborated, or, maybe they could have been, but they weren't, because it wasn't, a substantial enough lead or didn't have enough, of a meaty presence. But they're all little bits that add to our understanding of how this happened. And I think we will be able to answer a lot of the questions for ourselves, even with that lack of, because the lack of can be an answer.
I think we all wondered, was there some kind of social media connection? But at the same time, he was so thorough in wiping his devices, there may have just been something that we don't know.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that the use of his VPNs was very extensive. So obviously you don't want to dig up a hole that's been so dug through and try to force something to fit that's just simply not there. But like I said, I think sometimes the lack of is telling, where what we have is during hours that there was no business being in the neighborhood, unless you lived in the neighborhood or knew someone in the neighborhood, which clearly he didn't. There's no alibi there. On 23 occasions, at least, that his phone was on and with him for that time, he's over there. So you kind of have to ask yourself, why? And while I do think that, yes, his cover-up in some capacity worked, it's odd because some of the other stuff he did was so dumb. He purchased a gift card for $120, turned right around, purchased the K-bar knife with the sheath, the sharpener, and vegan supplements immediately. But purchased the gift card on his debit card, then used the gift card on his parents' Amazon account, which seems so dumb, knowing what you're going to do with this weapon, right? And then on top of that, he Googles, and doesn't do this on a VPN, how to delete his Amazon purchase history, which seems so ignorant, right? So it's kind of difficult to understand how he made his choices, what he thought was not a big deal versus what he thought was a big deal, something that should be wiped or, done in, a secret VPN tunnel or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think it's out of the question to, make an inference to say, he found him somewhere. Their Instagrams weren't private. We know that he hid his online behavior. We have proof of that. So is it that big of a jump to maybe consider this? I don't know. I think it's an individual question.
Yeah, I think a lot of these questions we're just always going to have too.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I don't really have any question. I think that, yes, it's very obvious that this wasn't random. He wasn't randomly just driving around houses, their specific neighborhood, on 23 different occasions, specifically drove by their house, 3, almost 4 times that night, and then just randomly went into, I think that that's out of the question, considering what we do know about him, that he did try to be methodical, and he did try to be, or have a plan. So I think that if you consider that, he probably wanted the crime to seem random or to be automatically associated to, a known associate of one of the kids, because typically that's who is responsible for something like this. So I think that he absolutely knew who, at least one of them were, either through, face-to-face surveillance, being out the home, or, some sort of online inference into their social media, or, a mixture of the two.
You're in this weird moment where you have the attention of like the world. The case does, your sister does. I know it's weird, but people are very invested in this.
Yeah, they've changed a lot of lives.
Yeah. And you've made the point, which is such a good point, of like, we should just move on from talking about him. And obviously, it's the day after the sentencing. We still kind of have to a little, but like, what do you think Kaylee would want in this moment? Like, what would she want people to do with this energy that has been created and this interest? Like, how can people remember her? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
And it might be too soon to really know, but.
Yeah, I reserve my right to evolve.
Yeah.
But right now, I think Kaylee would be really happy and really proud of everyone who takes this as an opportunity to, gain confidence and to, maybe find their voice a little bit, or, and I don't even mean in the court systems, it could be something as simple as, standing up to your bully, and I know that seems small comparative to murder and violence like this, but it's not. That's such like a life-changing situation for so many people. And I think that she would be really proud and really happy to know that her life made a difference in empowering people to be a stronger or more confident version of themselves. And I know that Maddie would feel the same way in regards to, being kind, being empathetic, and showing up authentically every day, because who you are is so specific to you. It has, you are the only you. And I know that's so cheesy, but it truly is how I feel about the girls, is they were so authentically them. They were so kind, they were so bright, and they were so confident. So for their story to be able to change lives, to be, to pick an attribute of them, to, channel a little bit, I know it would make them so proud.
Yeah, I think that's how it's going to make a difference too.
Yeah, just because here's the thing, I know that we all want to prevent crimes like this in the future. I want it more than anyone else, right? But what could have been different? I've asked myself so many times, what could have saved them? And the answer isn't a blanket statement. We can't say, well, don't drink and drive. We can't say, well, we need stricter laws on the purchase of K-bars. We can't, it's not simple like that. So as much as I want to prevent this, I think the best way, or, maybe just the takeaway from this, isn't so focused around that, but it's more about, seriously, like, live your life to the absolute fullest. And be a good friend, be a good sister, a good wife, a good, girl, not that they were wives, but be you as authentically as possible, because life is way too short to have regrets at the end. And unfortunately, you don't know when that end is going to hit you.
Yeah. And just my last thing, I mean, do you go back to California? I mean, kind of based on what you just said, like, I don't know, do you go back different after this? I mean, do you go back, you've got kids, is this sort of a new chapter now, or?
Yeah, I definitely felt a levity after yesterday. Like, as soon as I was able to sit back down, and I didn't anticipate this either, but I felt so much better. I felt like 1,000 pounds lighter. And for me, this next chapter is more so about accepting what has happened, getting as full of a story as I can understand with all of the evidence that's, going to come out, and then opening up that capacity that's been so taken by this to do more things in my life for my husband, for my kids, and for Kaylee and Maddie, and even Xana and Ethan. I feel like every single day I've worked so hard at this in some capacity. Sometimes I was fighting myself. Sometimes I was, supporting my dad or fighting, and to be able to know that that's not what tomorrow looks like, or the next day, or the next day, and that there is an end to this chapter is something that, it's strange to say I look forward to, but I do look forward to having that capacity for other things in my life that can be more forward focused and can be more positive, and will never, ever, ever not include honoring and remembering every single day Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. That was really powerful. I just want to thank Alivea and the rest of her family, and really all of the.
Sorry about that. Okay. So several things. Thank you, Desert Rose, for becoming a member. So if you didn't watch, you probably get the feeling that this girl has a lot to say, but she's very strong, and it came across big time yesterday. And this interview was done right after sentencing was over. So her dad, for the last couple weeks, had been going to different news stations, and after the plea deal happened, he was so angry that he said he wasn't going to go to the sentencing. He wasn't going to write a letter, because what's the point? So that was that. I mean, he said that probably at least 3 times. And then we find out that he has decided to say something. And as he's walking up there, he immediately is turning the podium. And he said later that that was a rule. And he said when he saw that rule, he knew he wasn't going to listen to it. He wanted to break the rules, because he was pretty upset about the fact that the plea deal didn't even force answers out of Brian. So it was really hard for him. But I don't know if that means that Alivea wouldn't have gone up and spoke. Like, if he didn't go, would she still go? Or maybe she is the only reason why he went, because he got to read her letter a day or two before, and he knew how impactful it would be. So yeah, maybe he just went because Alivea needed that support, and she did a phenomenal job. I mean, it's just, she looked at it from like a psychologist point of view almost, but she's not even one. But she just, I don't know, she did a great job in dealing with somebody and the mental capacity of Brian Kohberger. All right, I'm going to go ahead and play her speech if you guys missed it.
Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief. I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head everything I wish I could say to you. The truth about me is when I heard the news, I didn't cry. I listened for them. I promised them I would, that I would fight for them, that I would show up no matter what it cost me. I swore I'd never let them feel alone. Because you see, I've always been their heavyweight. I've always been the one to fight the battles they didn't feel ready to fight themselves. All it ever took was a call, and they knew I would handle it for them, no matter the time, no matter the cost. They could wave their white flag because they knew I would never back down, not for them, and not even death could change that. Somewhere along the line, I started to think about what I would say to them if I was given just one last chance. If I could gather enough heartbreak or love or sacrifice or whatever it took to get just one message across, what would I say? Throughout this entire process, I've written my feelings down at every moment, my wishes, my love, my denial, my anger. And as one final act of love, I'd planned to read these thoughts, even jarring and discombobulating and not even making sense. Because for me, that was true love. As bare and as naked as it could be, not laced in pretty words or dressed for the occasion, but written through bleary eyes at 2 a.m. with clenched fists, angry at this reality. My true final act of love was to continue on without them, for them. That dream to read aloud my love to them, to bring meaning through pain, was the latest blow in realizing you don't deserve it. And Kaylee and Maddie don't need it. Kaylee and Maddie have always known my love, and they would never ask me to prove it by further victimizing myself to a defendant who has shown no guilt, no remorse, no apprehension. They would say to me, "Why would you give the satisfaction of showing vulnerability now? You promised you would never back down." And for that clarity, I'm thankful. I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. And I won't feed your beast. Instead, I will call you what you are: sociopath, psychopath, murderer. I will ask the questions that reverberate violently in my own head, so loudly that I can't think straight most any day. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. How was your life right before you murdered my sisters? Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? Before making your move, did you approach my sisters? Detail what you were thinking and feeling. Before leaving their home, is there anything else you did? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? Did you recently start shaving or manually pulling out your eyebrows? Why November 13th? Did you truly think your Amazon purchase was untraceable because you used a gift card? How do you find it enjoyable to stargaze with such a severe case of visual snow? Where is the murder weapon? The clothes you wore that night? What did you bring into the house with you? What was the second weapon you used on Kaylee? What were Kaylee's last words? Please describe in detail the level of anxiety you must have felt when you heard the Bearcat pull up to your family home on December 30th, 2022. Which do you regret more? Returning to the crime scene 5 hours later, or never, ever going back to Moscow, not even once, after stalking them there for months? If you were really smart, do you think you'd be here right now? What's it like needing this much attention just to feel real? You're terrified of being ordinary, aren't you? Do you feel anything at all? Or are you exactly what you always feared? Nothing. If you're so powerful, then why are you still hiding, defendant? You see, I'm here today as me. But who are you? Let's try to take off your mask and see. You didn't create devastation. You revealed it in yourself. And that darkness you carry, that emptiness, you'll sit with it long after this is over. That is your sentence. And it was written on the wall long before you ever pled guilty. You didn't win. You just exposed yourself as the coward you are. You're a delusional, pathetic, hypochondriac loser who thought you were so much smarter than everybody else. Constantly scolding, turning your nose up to grammar mistakes, nitpicking and criticizing others. You wanted so badly to be different, to be special, to be better, to be deep, to be mysterious. You found yourself thinking you were better than everyone else, and you thought you could figure out the human psyche and see through it, all while tweaked out on heroin. Lurking in the shadows made you feel powerful because no one ever paid you any attention in the light. You thought you were exceptional, all because of a grade on a paper. You thought you were elite because your online IQ test from 2010 told you so. All of that effort just to seem important. It's desperate. There is a name for your condition, though. Your inflated ego just didn't allow you to see it. Wannabe. You act like no one could ever understand your mind, but the truth is you're basic. You're a textbook case of insecurity disguised as control. Your patterns are predictable. Your motives are shallow. You are not profound. You're pathetic. You aren't special or deep, not mysterious or exceptional. Don't ever get it twisted again. No one is scared of you today. No one is intimidated by you. No one is impressed by you. No one thinks that you are important. You orchestrated this like you thought you were God. Now look at you, begging a courtroom for scraps. You spent months preparing, and still all it took was my sister in a sheath. You work so hard to seem dangerous, but real control doesn't have to prove itself. The truth is, the scariest part about you is how painfully average you turned out to be. The truth is, you're as dumb as they come. Stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty. Let me be very clear. Don't ever try to convince yourself you mattered just because someone finally said your name out loud. I see through you. You want the truth? Here's the one you'll hate the most. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your fucking ass. Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, if you missed it, they all started cheering and clapping. She was the first one that had that happen, and then one or two more people did. So strong. This whole thing's been so horrible. I wrote her for an interview. There's a chance because she's definitely talking right now, so maybe. But I also asked her whether she does an interview or not, if there's any charities that the families are backing or have started or anything like that that might be good for me and my viewers to know about and help if we want to. So hopefully we'll hear back at least on that. I would not be surprised if many charities are started from these people. They all have rallied together, and I think they want to try to help and do good to as many people as they can. So I would think one's coming, even if they don't have it right now. So, all right, I'm gonna hop off of here. Today's been a long morning and afternoon, but I will be back on here later. I'm gonna check a couple things to see if any of the other families gave more interviews, whether that was last night or this morning, and if so, we'll check that out. All right, as always, thank you for watching.